Evening to all of you. On behalf of CAHO Supply Chain Leaders Forum, I am excited to welcome you all to our webinar on procurement planning for biomedical equipment. Our supply chain forum is India's first of its kind forum, which is dedicated exclusively to our healthcare supply chain leadership. And this forum is building a future where healthcare supply chains are not just operational backbones, but strategic enablers of patient safety, sustainability, and innovation as well. We are going to have a fantastic session on procurement planning for biomedical equipment. As we all know, in healthcare, meticulous planning is paramount. I'm sure this session will equip you with the strategic insights needed to navigate the complexities involved in acquiring the critical biomedical equipment, thereby ensuring efficiency, compliance, and optimal patient care. I hope this seminar will enlighten each one of us. Thank you for being here. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Renjith. He is a seasoned professional in biomedical engineering, hospital project planning, and medical equipment planning and management. He has an overall extensive experience of around 25 years in both operational and also in consultancy roles. Now, I invite Mr. Renjith, biomedical engineering expert, to deliver the talk. Over to you, Renjith.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you to the CAHO Forum, and thank you, Dr. Vinoth, for giving me this opportunity. I'm happy to be part of this effort. I understand this is the first of its kind, and I'm happy to be part of this forum where we are actually trying to strengthen our own internal systems in terms of acquisition of technology. I basically come from a biomedical engineering background, so my whole focus is on biomedical equipment procurement and with a lot more stress on the biomedical engineering side. Ultimately, when you look at technology, it is all driven by, if you look at the equipment, it's all driven by technology. And technology keeps changing in such a fast pace, you can't even cope up with the pace at which it is going. Nowadays, it is all AI and big data analysis and all those things. So we never know what is the future. But at the present age, yes, we have to find out ways to get the best out of the options available to us. And that's what we are trying to all. Myself, Renjith, I'm presently working as General Manager, Biomedical and Hospital Engineering in HOSMAC Middle East in Dubai. You must be wondering what a person sitting in Dubai will have to do something on a CAHO conference. Well, the fact is that I was actually in India for almost 25 years, and it is just 1 week since I moved to Dubai. And my commitment to take a session was actually given a long time back to Mr. Dr. Vinoth. So that's why you may find my designation slightly different, or location slightly different. But of course, I've been in this role in India for almost 25 years.
Renjith, just a second. We have a presence in GCC also. So we would like to have you, to play a key role in GCC region, since you are recently relocated to Dubai.
Okay, thanks for giving those informations. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just run straight into my presentation now. So I have around 40-45 slides. So it will not take much time. After the presentation, I'll just run you through some of the examples as well, so which I hope will help some of them in their work stream as well. So what is the key learning objectives at the end of the session? One is to understand how to align procurement with clinical, technical, financial, and regulatory needs. If you look at it, these four are the key things which drives healthcare organizations. And our procurement system should actually align with all these four things. If you're meeting only the clinical requirements, but not meeting some of the regulatory requirements, then you are running into trouble. You may meet all the three, but the regulatory is becoming so stringent, and it is actually a must to ensure that the patient safety is there. So we should also have a process where our systems and processes strengthen the governance for the audit readiness and regulatory compliance. So again, it boomerangs, or it just links get back to the regulatory compliances. That is some area where I felt many people are actually ignoring. So we will have a look at what are the regulatory compliances and how to adhere to those systems. And at the end of the day, the objective is how to achieve better patient safety, how to have an optimized capital use of equipments, and sustainable medical technology. So unless you have a sustainable technology acquisition, your organizations are not really going to financially do better and sustain for a long period of time. So these are the key learning objectives. At the end of the day, we hope we will achieve all these things. And the structure of my presentation will be, we will just have a brief introduction. Of course, being a biomedical, I will definitely have a little bit more inputs on the biomedical side. So we'll have also capture areas like why we require it, that's need assessment, and what is equipment inventory and equipment inventory assessment in terms of procurement planning. How do we prioritize and the need for prioritization of requirements, budgeting, and financial planning. Market research and supply identification, technical specifications and bidding and awarding of contracts, and of course, our own systems and processes that's called governance, ethics, and documentations. And of course, we'll have a small conclusions and recommendations as well. So this is the structure of the program. So I will now move on to the next slide, that is introduction. So what is just an overview of what biomedical engineering does in healthcare? Biomedical engineers are the people who actually bridges the gap between technology and clinical care. It's like a man-machine interference. And so between a man and a machine, there is the people called, or the fraternity called biomedical engineers, who bridges or balances both the sides. And of course, biomedical engineers have a major role in ensuring safety, effective, and efficient use of medical equipment throughout their life cycle. So these are objectives of biomedical engineering. Being a biomedical engineer, I have to list out these objectives first before we go on to what we call as the equipment, what we want to do in equipment procurement today. So biomedical engineers' objectives in equipment planning and procurement. If you look at it, they support clinical operations through reliable and safe equipments. They ensure compliance with regulatory and safety standards, optimize cost, quality, and technology alignment with institutional goals. So biomedical engineers, being man-machine and link, they are the ones who take up the operations, clinical operations, supporting with the technology, compliances, and cost optimizations. So need assessment. So any procurement, any supply chain, or any procurement professional, the first question that they're going to ask is, why do you need it? You ask for a stationary items also, they will ask why you need it. You ask for a computer, the question comes why. So everywhere the question is to have a necessity, identify the necessity of it. That is, we call it as simple as need assessment. Why do you really need it? And how do you justify your needs? That is what we are trying to capture. So when it comes to medical equipments, it is basically systematic identification of medical equipment requirements and a need which aligns with the clinical demand and service objectives. So if I want to have an X-ray machine for my facility, the first question is, why do you need it? How many machines do you have? If it's an existing hospital, if it's a new project, yes, that's a different scenario of things where we don't go into the inventory, but we still look at what specifications and all those things. So the need and identification of those specific needs are actually critical. So when we want to identify those specific needs, what we need to do is actually we need to coordinate with various department heads, clinicians, especially to identify the needs. When I say clinicians, it's not only clinicians. Nowadays, the paramedical staff and nursing staff also has to give a very, very critical inputs in terms of actually identifying the correct needs for the equipment. And we also have to identify the workflow, service gaps, and technology trends. So need assessment is not just whether you say, yes, you need it or not need it, but how you need it, when you need it, at what stage you need it, what is that you really need it. All those things comes as a part of the need assessment. When we go for need assessment, this is the first thing what you get is clinical and operational inputs. That is, we need to understand the patient load, the procedure types, and the clinical specialties related to it. Suppose you want to set up a urology department. You have to identify how many patients you are expecting, out of that possibility of converting into procedures, or how many of them may have a need for a procedures. And if so, what kind of procedures do they need? Whether they need a lithotripsy, whether they need a cystoscopy, whether they need a surgical procedures. So all those things are actually something which go as a part of your inputs in terms of need assessment. And if there are any bottlenecks and process insufficiencies. When we say operational bottlenecks and process insufficiencies, you may want to bring in a new system or a new specialty, but you are not equipped enough into that particular area. So that is where we call it as bottlenecks. And once you identify the need, you have to really, as a biomedical person, this is one critical area which I find many organizations are lacking, is actually to identify whether the site is suitable and whether the infrastructure will actually hold good. This happens even for new projects. Suppose you are actually planning for an MRI. How do you take the MRI magnet inside to a particular location? How do you transport it? Whether the pathways for transportation has been identified. Can you easily move it in and install it without any complications? Whether the power requirements, whether the heat load requirements, all the things are actually meeting the particular machine that you're going to get. This is one critical area in terms of actually equipment procurement, and why this is actually needed. Because I'll just tell a simple example. You install a cath lab. After procurement, identifying you have done the best negotiation, you got the best pricing, you got the best machine in. You start working and suddenly there is high humidity in the particular cath lab room, and you're not able to make the equipment functional, or the equipment is frequently breaking down because of this particular issue. Why is that? Excessive humidity has happened. Sometimes the heat load is too much, the air conditioning is not adequate, and then you actually end up revamping your HVAC system to really meet those demands. This is because you are not actually capturing the actual heat load of a machine or a utility requirements. When we see utility requirements, it is power, HVAC. Now we even look at IT infrastructure requirements, structural strength of a building, all those things. So once we have all these things facility ready only, then your need assessment actually is complete. Without that, without your assessment, if you're going for procurement actually, then you are actually buying equipment which will lie in the in your storage area for quite a few months without, and having an undue delay in installations. Dr. Vinoth, do we have any questions in between, or can we have the question and answers towards the end? How is
We
the
can have it in
schedule?
either way.
Yeah.
You can proceed and let the participants post their question in the chat box.
Okay.
Once after you finish your presentation, then we'll go one by one.
Okay, sure.
Is it
Thank
okay?
you. Yeah, that's fine from my end.
Okay.
Okay. So now the need assessment. Once you identified the need, actually, we need to make sure that we have a detailed need assessment report. You might have done all the studies. You might have said, yes, we need it. But tomorrow when an audit comes actually, and somebody who might question us, or it may be financial audit for an acquisition of a hospital, it may be anything else, and then the need assessment report becomes very crucial. So when you identify your needs, when you identify critical clinical requirements, when you identify how critically or how sufficiently your infrastructure is going to take on that particular the equipment, all things has to be well documented. A structured need assessment reports needs to be there, and provide justification for each proposed equipment item. Suppose you have an MRI and you want to go for an MR spectroscopy. The same study, whatever we mentioned earlier, your patient load, the kind of the volumes that you're going to get, and all the things needs to be documented and justified. Yes, sometimes your need may not be may be justified, sometimes may not be justifiable in full strength. But from business point of view, the management may still go with a new equipment. But all the more, what was said and done, whatever your studies are, whether it is covering the entire aspects, or even you are covering only 3/4 of the aspects, but have it documented, it becomes a valid report in the future. Now, this scenario comes, equipment inventory assessment comes when you really have a running hospital. It's not a greenfield project, but you're going to have an acquisition for a equipment which is actually for a running hospital. So before we do that equipment inventory assessment, make sure that you have a proper equipment inventory, which covers a comprehensive record of all medical devices. It should be minor or major, or even I would say even IT-related infrastructure requirements which are related to medical equipments. So a comprehensive record of all this detail should be there. It should have the make, model, serial number, date of installation, maintenance, and all those details actually. And of course, the history of the machine should also be there. But of course, that's going on to higher end. But these are basic requirements on which you have to review back and then decide whether these equipments are required or not. Of course, there are a lot of supportive things like WHO and ECRI-based equipment classifications are there. And make sure that you assign a unique ID for easy traceability of the machine. It's like nowadays an Aadhaar card for everybody. Your machine should also have an ID number. Only with that, you can actually trace the entire history of the machines. So nowadays, we don't go by in an ICU, the 4th monitor or the 5th monitor or the first ventilator like that. But each machine has got a running sequence identification number, whether it is IT related or whether it's medical equipment, whether it's even engineering. This is becoming a mandatory protocol for managing the equipment, plus from financial and regulatory point of view as well. So make sure you have a good inventory system in place with all these details. And when you're doing your need assessment, when you're doing your asset evaluation, actually, evaluation of age, condition, performance, everything becomes a deciding factor whether you want to put into your report whether this particular equipment is needed or not. There may be underutilized equipment, but still there may be a requirement coming up. So when you do a need assessment, all those things adds to your records in terms of deciding and preparing a report. Now, of course, there are tools for inventory management. Yes, being biomedical, I get a little bit more inclined to speak a little bit more on all those things, because inventory management in Excel or any other open source system is always going to land you in trouble. So there are always softwares available nowadays, which is not very expensive, unlike the earlier days. So you have a computerized maintenance management system. You have an asset tracking systems, actually, equipment asset management systems are there. So these are things which will actually help you to track your equipment real time and track the life cycle as well. So based on your actually history of the machines, you will come to a conclusion whether you have this particular make, model or something, and whether the clinician who is requesting something is actually some new equipment, whether it is something which you can manage within an existing inventory, or whether you really need to purchase or procure those things. So your need assessment is supported by your equipment inventory. It is just a supportive mechanism or an additional tool for you to come to a conclusion in your reports. So once you identify your needs, now we have to decide on which has to be given a priority. So now you rank your equipment based on risk, clinical impact, and compliance urgency. When you say compliance urgency, it could be from the business point of view. Yes, you identified certain needs from various departments. You are cross-checked with your inventory. You don't have any duplication of assets coming, and then you say, yes, these many items are required. Let's say you listed out around 25 major equipments, but out of those 25, which are the one which needs to come in first? So again, it drills down to your clinical impact. It depends on your business plans as well. So rank these need assessments into a list where you can actually give a prioritization, which has to go first, which has to go second, third, like that. So when you prioritize, keep these few points also in mind. One is clinical necessity and patient safety, frequency of use, and technology. When you say technology is getting fast obsolete as well. So when you are actually prioritization, you make sure that you don't jump into technology which is just getting obsolete. You may be in a hurry to buy some machine, but make sure that you do a proper technology assessment before you prioritize your procurement plans. For example, certain machines should have been launched 5 years back, and now they are going to phase out and introduce a new model. So when you are about to have a new model, there's no need to hurry up and prioritize and go for a previous model unless there is a driving business demand which forces you to do so. Of course, regulatory and accreditation requirements are one more thing. Regulatory means there are a lot of stringent criteria across the world. But unfortunately, in India, it has not been very strict. But now, yes, we have organizations like CDSA and bringing in regulations, and even equipment recalls are getting documented nowadays, which is a good system to have. So please do have a look at all the regulatory and accreditation requirements while you are prioritizing your list. There's one more system which you need to consider is the inputs from users, finance, and management. That's I said earlier, like the business point of view. So when you say priority, I want this particular machine, or let's say I want a cath lab in this particular quarter, and whereas the budget allocation is not that good enough, your business is not really driving. Technology point of view, yes, maybe you are getting the equipment is getting phased out, support is minimal. Yes, you may need the pressure, but that's why you need to actually identify the risk involved in delaying a procurement or prioritization, delaying a priority actually, because there may be some other implications as well. So we need to have a metric scoring system for transparent ranking. So once these are documented, it becomes a very clear-cut need assessment report. Once you need a need assessment, one part of it is done actually. Suppose you are actually in the mid of going to next financial year, you always need to have a budgeting and financial planning. If it's a new project, then all these things would have happened in the beginning stage, need assessment, all these things before the project even kicks off. But if you're in a running hospital, you have a year-on-year budgeting and financial planning. Simple, or the most important thing, which it might look very simple, but a bit difficult, is to do a realistic and at the same time sustainable financial planning. When you say realistic, we have to have the projections of the equipment as well as the costing in a very realistic manner. When we over project or when we under project, and when we try to cut down our budgets, and we land up in trouble because we will not be able to get the same equipment at a projected price. Suppose we do a over budgeting, then the next question comes to is maybe another client or any other vendor or the nearby healthcare organization would have purchased a similar equipment at a much lower cost. So the question comes back again onto the person who is actually doing the prioritization and budgeting. So always be realistic and make sure that you are actually targeting within specific quarters and expected inflation rates before you do the financial listing. Life cycle costing is also it's very important when it comes to technology acquisitions. When you say life cycle costing, it's procurement, maintenance, consumables, and at the same time, disposable cost. I'll go to each one of it one by one. Procurement cost is, of course, one-time acquisition cost is what we generally think. But there's an associate factor where many companies offer standard warranty of say 1 year or 2 years. And you negotiate and then you say, we get it for 5-year warranty. And please keep in mind that no company, no vendor actually sells any product at a loss or at a prospective loss option. So you would have always added these margins to it. Apart from that, when you demand from a company standard warranty of 2 years to another, add another 3 years, you will definitely factor those into the costing, and you end up paying upfront those amount also. Maybe your CMC or annual maintenance cost would have been, say, let's say for a CT machine, your CMC cost would have been 15 lakhs. And you end up paying actually almost 30-35 lakhs upfront in the time of procurement itself. So you need to look at the procurement cost at the same time, looking at whether it is always beneficial enough to have a standard warranty and go for a comprehensive maintenance contract, or go for a bundle, what you can say, increase now years of warranty. So these are some analysis which you'll have to do at the time of procurement so that your life cycle costing becomes more realistic. Consumable costing is another thing which is very, very important. You buy an equipment and then you want to run the equipment. more than your machine impact, your consumable costing impact would be much more, what you can say, impacting your business or revenue. And companies might give you, or they may even give you at a throwaway price for the equipments, but they will make sure that the consumable costing is actually inflated upon, and then you end up buying at a very high inflated pricing. So at the time of procurement itself, when you look at the life cycle costing, you will know what is the machine, the equipment cost, what is the associated maintenance cost, and then what is the associated consumable cost for running this particular machine. Because there are certain machines which are actually closed systems. You cannot have a different vendor product or different vendor accessories coming into it. So you end up buying only, you have no options other than to buy from that particular vendor only. And you end up spending more on consumables. Your capital cost may look low, but your running cost will look where you will run into crores without any control actually. And there's one more factor called disposal cost. This is something which we generally don't give much importance at the time of procurement. We acquire it, we use it 10 years down the line, and then you want to dispose it. Just an example, if you want to dispose of, I'll just take an example of a very unique equipment, let's say Gamma knife. It's unique product. You have a cobalt 60 source, which is a radioactive source. You get it installed, and after a period of maybe 5 years or 7 years, you have to change those cobalt 60 source. And this particular source has to go back to the country of origin. We cannot actually dispose it in India because Indian ARB regulations do not allow to dispose this kind of thing, and we don't have the mechanism also. So it has to go back to the company or to the country of origin, which means it's a huge cost of exporting a radioactive material, partially active radioactive material, because the half-life never ends, comes to zero. It keeps on radioactivity. So this has to go back to the company, and this adds to a very, very high cost, which usually is not actually looked into at the time of procurement. If you forecast this actually into your life cycle costing, and if you're able to freeze up that price at the time of procurement, then you are saving quite a lot of money on that. If you miss out on that, actually, your disposal cost kills you at the time when you start making a profit. Your majority of the profit will go because you need to actually, your patient load has increased, but your equipment efficiency has come down because of the half-life thing, and then you need to actually get a new source, but at the same time you have to re-export back the old source, which is actually going to hit you very much. So that's what we call it as total cost of ownership. It's not just a 1 year or 5 year or a projected life of 7 years. It's actually till we dispose of that equipment. So as I said, actually, your consumable cost is there actually, and then your capital asset investment is there. So when you purchase an equipment, make sure that we categorize under capital and operational expenditure. Most of the time we look at only the capex expenditure, we budget only the capex expenditure, but at the same time, nowadays we need to make sure that we have an OpEx expenditure also calculated onto the associated medical equipment or the capital equipment. And of course, plan annual budget with expected replacement timelines. Timelines of replacement is something which you can actually probably come to know as we go. And we look at cost benefit considerations. When we look at budgeting, financing, and all those things, we are always looking at one-time investment or a long-term investment. Many times we are driven by the situation where we look at only one-time investment and forgetting about the life cycle cost, forgetting about the life or the life of the equipment, the long-term savings, and the clinical impact of investments. We buy an equipment, but we understand that you cannot be upgraded. So then we are actually, your long-term savings are lost because after 5 years or something, you have to again change the. So your long-term savings has a very big impact on your procurement policies. Look at the long-term equipment usage, the life cycle cost, the investments, the associated consumable cost, the capex and OpEx investments, what it is. If it's going to last for 10 years, actually, look at the 10-year running cost, and then you evaluate whether in 5 years, let's say, for example, you're buying maybe, let's say, what do you call? let's say hemodynamic monitoring system. Okay, let's say we have two options. One vendor is costing you more than 50% of the equipment value. But if you look at the running cost for 5 or 10 years, actually, the vendor which has quoted 50% less would be actually gaining more than 50 to 70% after 5 years just because of the consumable costing alone. So these are kind of things which you have to look at it. That's why the life cycle cost is important. One-time investment is important. Tabulate everything and make sure that you have a long-term service and a savings plan in place before you make your recommendations. That is when you actually give a budget justification reports. Your investment budget, your finance budgeting would have been 3 crores. And you have vendor A who is quoting only 1.5 crores, and you have vendor B, you are quoting 2.5 crores. But you want to recommend 2.5 crores for Y equipment or a vendor for what purpose? So have enough justification, running costs, everything, so that, and a consolidated report which will reflect all these things. This will help you to justify your requirements, and the records will always be a regulatory or a audit purpose compliance as well. So once you give a proper justifications, then your management approval process becomes much more simple. No verbal communications helps these days. Actually, it's all documented. And because if it is documented, if there's an evidence, it's a proof that it is done. If there's no document, if there's an evidence, there's no evidence, then it is said that it's not done. So if you have done it, document it. And document always helps you and saves you as well. So now you've done the need identification, you've identified the various equipments, the long-term impact of the cost actually, and then you do a market research and supply identification. There may be multiple vendors for a certain product. That is one confusion which can actually happen in the industry nowadays. Same consumable, multiple vendors. Same capital asset, multiple vendors. So you have to look at their long-term presence in the market and benchmark them with the available technology, what they are having, and they have been dealing it for the long time. So benchmarking of suppliers is something which is going to add as the next value addition in your report. You identified the needs, you have justified you have prepared the budgets, you have done all this justification for going for even for a high one-time investment equipment, comparing the cost of consumables and all, but from whom we will purchase it. For major capital equipments, yes, sometimes it will not be a problem because there will be some unique products. It is always okay. But there are certain areas where we have multiple or overlapping of dealerships, or just some what you can say manipulations are also happening in the industry. So we need to be a bit aware of it, and that's why we said benchmarking available should be there. So assess vendor history, compliance certifications, and service capability. These are part of your vendor pre-qualifications. And the regulatory and licensing products like the FDA, CE, or local regulatory requirements, make sure these are actually in place. Nowadays, CDSO has made it mandatory that any equipment which is getting imported needs to have a registration. So without registrations, they are not supposed to sell it, and we are not supposed to buy it also. So they may try to sell it, but it is our responsibility that we don't buy without a proper registrations. And like your equipment inventory, always have equipment supplier database for transparency and easy work systems as well as efficiency. Now the next area will be technical specifications and bidding. I'm sure most of us actually have run into something called technical specifications at some point of time. Everybody has got mobile, and nowadays what we do a technical comparison. We look at what is the specification of the camera, what is the memory capacity, what is the display size, what is the resolution. A little bit of specification evaluation we do, knowingly or unknowingly we do it actually. So when it comes to actually medical equipments, it is biomedical engineers actually who are supposed to draft a detailed and objective specifications. When we say detailed, it should have multiple details captured in that. One is, you generally call it as make, model, and then year of manufacture, which many of us don't give much importance actually. Or year of launching, I would say. It's not year of manufacture, it's year of launching. And the year of launching worldwide is something, and year of launching into India or in some other countries, there may be a little bit of time gap. So we need to capture both year of launching in the worldwide and year of launching in your particular country. And whether it has got a FDA approval or whether it has got a CE approval or whether it has got here ERB registration, which is mandatory in countries like India. So there are multiple regulatory requirements, whether these are actually being met by the particular vendor. That is the first thing actually which goes into any technical specifications. And if you want to add a little bit more onto that, yes, there is universal device nomenclature, categorization, risk categorizations are there. So if you can add onto this, it is well and good. You can always refer to some of the WHO documents, which I can show you towards the end of the presentation. Some samples are there actually, on which you can structure your technical specifications and bidding processes. When you develop specification, we told about make, model, regulatory requirements and all. Then comes the functional and safety requirements. When you say functional requirements, we look at some technical requirements as well as others are basically clinical applications. If you have a CT scan, you look at, let's say, 128 slice, you look at tilting gantry and all those things, actually up-down table, all those things you look at it, the tube capacity and all. But the other things is actually the functionality part, that is the clinical applications part. What are the real applications that you really need into that particular machine? Because any equipment is actually software upgradable. Like especially when I took the example of a CT, there is a lot of software which is actually optional. By default, you get certain things, but there are many optional things which you need to opt for. It's like simple. When you go and buy a car, you get some standard items, but certain items we need to opt for it. Similarly, in medical equipments, the optional list is actually pretty long, depending on different equipments. So you need to list out the functional requirements, and then also then you need to look at what is that your performance. That is your big core technical things. 128 slice, scan speed, all those things you list it out. Excuse me. Safety requirements, yes, your regulatory compliances in terms of certain high-end machines like X-ray generating machines. But at the same time, when we say safety, we ignore it and we look only onto these kind of high-end machines. But even a single syringe pump or infusion pumps, which is actually coming under the critical category equipments, we need to make sure that all the electrical safety aspects are being actually met with. There are standards like IEC 60601, which any product coming from Europe or US by default, they need to meet it if they want to export it. But unfortunately, in India, we have a lot of companies coming up with a lot of innovations and in-house products under the Government of India initiatives. But we need to make sure that these products meet those safety standards. This should be mandatorily looked into by your procurement people, unless we insist the quality of our indigenous products will not improve. We look at the price, but we compromise on performance and safety. So safety aspects, when we start focusing, the quality of in-house products also will improve. The safety of a patient, which is of prime importance, is always assured. When we look at costing, when you look at a lower technology, we end up actually losing more than what we really gain. And of course, when we look at technical specifications and when you look at any procurement, we are not supposed to be any brand specific to ensure fair competitions, because brand is not what drives it. Actually, it is the technology. So technology is what drives it, and make sure that when you are listing out your technical specifications, along with your functional and safety requirements, then you have a system where actually you're not favoring any particular brand or any particular vendor. So tender and RFP preparation, because for proposals or RFI, whatever it is actually done by the procurement team, but biomedical engineers can actually assist this team actually in preparing complete and clear tender documents. Because technical aspects, life cycle costing, need assessment, they have the entire history behind them when they come to list out the technical requirement. And they are the right people who can actually list it out and be an integral part of the procurement team to float the tenders. When you do a tender bidding, actually, when you do a tender, there is always vendors who will come back with a lot of queries actually. There'll be a lot of RFIs or the request for informations where you need to have a meeting, we need to clarify it. Again, it's all to ensure that there's a transparency and that you're not favoring any particular vendor. And you have always all systems in place to make sure that you get all the technical aspects as well as the clinical requirements, regulatory aspects, and safety aspects correctly. So there is always a compliance checklist which you need to really frame out, so that will help you in your bidding processes. Governance, ethics, and documentations. I hope most of you who are actually in the supply chain and procurement will understand the need of this actually. Because we are the one people who are always under scrutiny and thinking that we have favored a particular vendor. We might have felt the technology is good, so we would have given a importance for that technology, but the vendor who has lost it probably will have a different feeling against us. So it's always difficult to balance all the sides, because ultimately we are only looking at technology and the acquisition of the best technology. So your governance like need assessment reports, recommendations, budgeting, everything will help you. And you need to have a strong ethics and documentation. That's what we are actually going to capture in this next few slides. Your assessments of bids, like we had talked up to tender floating. And once you get the tender bids, actually, your assessment is to be on a predefined technical criteria, which means before you open the technical bid, you need to know how you are going to evaluate that technical bid. You're not to define something after opening the technical bid. You're supposed to have all the systems or processes defined, so that when we open the technical bid, we know, yes, what we are looking for. When we run through the example, we will probably have a little bit more detailed explanation of this. Scoring sheets, covering functionality, compliance, service support, etc. Yes, this is, again, I think will be best described when we run through a sample. Comparative statements and evaluations and gradings for management reports. So this also I will run in detail while we actually think, but of course you will understand why these comparative statements are important and what do you really need to cover in your comparative statements. When you say comparison, it's just not financial alone. We start with the year of launching, the year of launching into a particular country. Then you have the technical specifications. Then you have the clinical clinical applications list. Some of these are standard, some of these are optional. Then you have your standard warranty, warranty terms and conditions, warranty exclusions and inclusions. Like for many items, there will be some exclusions. They call it glasswares or anything like that, and which is excluded from your warranty. And your CT tube, they call it generally as a glassware and is excluded from the warranty. And you may have a pro rata warranty system in place. So all these things are actually something which you have to really bring up in your comparative statements. One vendor may, if your tender bidding is not really clearly defined, sometimes one vendor may give pro rata warranty and one other may give a comprehensive warranty, which means automatically you end up with a mismatching the pricing as well. So the comparative statement should be clear. The grading report should be very standardized so that you have a one-to-one, or as everybody says, apple-to-apple comparison to the best extent possible. Unbiased technical recommendations. That is what we just mentioned actually. Okay. So once we do all these things, actually, we make sure that the medical equipment procurement aligns with clinical, technical, financial, and regulatory needs. This is the first point which we described as the objective of our presentations. You use a structured approach for evidence-based decision making. When we say structured approach, we have listed out the need assessment report. We have listed out the tender bidding documents. We have now listed out the technical comparisons and evaluation reports and the final recommendation report for the management. We then talked about the equipment inventory, how to identify the gaps in terms of the technology available and what is required, what is not required, and the prioritization frameworks. We also looked at the financial planning, life cycle costing, which is actually the next big important thing which we have to do while we do a procurement system in place. And we also looked at the acquisition, maintenance, consumables, and end of life requirements or the disposal requirements. So we also emphasize the need for procurement transparency and the standardized technical specifications without any particular vendor bias or any particular technical bias as well. Make sure you have a good governance and practice and documentation system in place so that your work is always unquestionable in terms of your selection procedures. Because there's a huge money involved, capital equipments, procurement is not just a few lakhs of crores these days, it runs into huge money, which is actually something which is always under a scanner. And you need to be making sure that your documentation systems are perfect so that you don't end up in trouble at a later stage. And of course, we do all systems will help us to improve patient safety and of course have the optimized capital investments. And ultimately, our objective is to have a sustainable medical technology environment. And that will meet the present requirements as well as the future requirements. So I hope with that, I've covered all aspects of the procurement process in terms of medical equipments. So ultimately, I hope the objectives of the key learning objectives are come as an outcomes. We have learned how to align procurement, clinical, technical, and financial and regulatory needs. How to do this actually, what is the importance of all those things. The need for strengthening the governance for audit readiness and regulatory compliances, we have captured that. And of course, how to achieve better patient safety in terms of technical specification listing out the mandatory safety standards, electrical safety standards, how to optimally use your resources, and thereby creating a sustainable medical technology. With that, I come to the conclusion of my presentation. If you have any questions, we'll run through the questions, and then I will run you through certain presentation, certain examples as well, in terms of how we can actually list out your specifications and in terms of comparisons and how in terms of how to document and provide a report.
Thank you, Renjith. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. There are a few questions from our participant side. I will read out one by one.
Yeah.
How to give ID number? Any standard sequence?
I guess the requirement they're talking about the asset inventory management.
Yes, even I think,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah. See, if, for example, if you have a software in place, you can actually predefine your software as to which running number sequence you want to start with. Let's say I want to start my medical equipments with, say, 1. So I can be 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, it will keep on running. When it comes to your IT equipment, you can actually put it starting with 2. So 20001, 2002 will be your IT equipments. If you want to put your facility engineering, your generators, your HV systems into the system, then you can start with 3. So it will be 30001, like that, it will continue. So the interesting thing in this computerized system is like, suppose your asset number 100321 is actually becoming obsolete. You cannot reassign that number to another asset. It will be always a running sequence number only. That is how a software system will run.
Another question is, please clarify that the year of medical equipment launched into the market from the date of manufacturing is subject to cost depreciation.
Can you just repeat the question actually?
Please clarify that the year of medical equipment launched into the market from the date of manufacturing is subject to cost depreciation.
See, cost depreciation happens, let's say, after we acquire the technology.
Yes.
Okay. So let's say the year of launching a product, it happens in, let's say, a high-end CT machine. Let's say it is coming in. It happens in the RSNA. Let's say it happens in 2026 RSNA. It may come into India after maybe 2027. At that time, whatever they launch is the launching price for us in India. But once you acquire that technology, and then your depreciation starts. It's not based on what is actually launched, but why we are actually capturing the year of launching and the year of launching in your particular country is to make sure that you are not going in with an obsolete technology. If you're going to buy a CT machine, which is launched 7 years back, and you can always expect that in another 3 or 4 years, actually, they will actually declare an end of life. And then you will have a limited support for that product. So the objective of asking for a year of launching and the year of launching into a particular country is to make sure that we are actually going for makes and machines which are actually newer in, not the older or same model or same vendor will have launched it, but a few 7, 5, 6 years back, which is actually not going to help us.
Another question is, what is the ideal frequency for tender and rate contracts?
See, frequency for tender for capital medical equipments, it is based on your need, your organization demands as to when the technology should come in, actually. This is when you have a quarter. Once you have a financial budgeting, then you decide which quarter, which one you want to procure, and accordingly you release the tender. Rate contract, yes, if you have a full 1 year, actually, let's say, for example, syringe pumps. You have a group of hospital where you are handling multiple group of hospital and there's centralized procurement. You know your projections of different hospitals coming to around, let's say, 300 syringe pumps for a particular financial year. And you actually have to look at that volume and negotiate and putting in a rate contract, but you acquire it as per your quarterly requirements of various hospitals. You release a PO at the time as a, what you can say, based on your financial allocations, but you freeze the rate at the beginning of the particular financial year beginning with a rate negotiations and rate contracts in place.
Can you suggest a maintenance management software for asset tracking?
I'm not supposed to speak in favor of any particular vendors. What I can do is I can share across the details to Dr. Vinoth. There are a few vendors actually who are, and maybe it depends on your location as well. So you can share across the location and the details, which Dr. Vinoth can share to me, and then I can suggest some vendors over there actually. But there are a lot of Indian players as well as there are multinational players also into this stream. And there are quite a good software which are actually, if you're looking for India, there are customized software which will make sure that your audits for NABH is very, very smooth. All the requirement in terms of NABH process, they are captured in a very specific way, and that will help you. Thank you.
What does it mean, clinical applied list in the comparison sheet?
Clinical application list, I would say.
Clinical
actually,
applied list, this is what it is mentioned.
I think probably, yeah,
Okay,
probably they got it wrong
application.
actually.
That could be.
I have an example of a CT scan actually. When you say CT scan, there are standard softwares for various applications. Certain applications or certain evaluations of the process are actually optional softwares. It comes as an extra price. So when we list out, actually, you need to list out what are the standard softwares. And then you also need to know what are the optional softwares. And in that optional softwares, what are the ones that your organization really require? If, for example, there are 20 softwares, your hardware remains the same. Some additions of 1 or 2 additions of hardware may be there. 5 may come as a standard, and there may be 15 optional applications in that. In that 15 applications, 5 may be neuro, 3 may be cardiac, 3 may be gastro, and like that. So you need to identify which is the one additionally is your core department. Let's say if the gastro department is actually going to utilize those softwares more, then you need to add it into your requirement list. From the optional list, you pick it up and make it as a requirement in your tender process. That's it.
How to filter the one equipment more supplier or who is the correct vendor? The question is not clear, but what I understand is how to
see,
filter.
what happens is there keeps dealership changing happens in India. Maybe one particular local dealer would have been the authorized distributor for a period of 3 years. And then the distribution would have probably got changed. Okay, but the distribution change, he doesn't want to customer to be known because he would have probably given the first quotation before he lost the dealership. So he tries to sell that product again. So what you need to do when you, how to identify is at the time of procurement, just before you release the, or you are finalizing your product, you ask for the authorized dealership documents. So you will come to know who is the latest authorized dealer. Because this is always everybody wants to make revenue, everybody wants to make sure that they get the best profit. But at the same time, we also make sure that we don't want to fail in our systems actually.
What is the Indian standard lifetime for the equipments based on criticality?
See, there is no real standards which define this machine is actually supposed to be used only for 5 years or 7 years like that. There's a generalized understanding on a processing that, okay, certain equipments can be used for 7 years. It's an ideal situation which we generally give a projection. If you ask me, ECRI and other organizations, they have a recommendations, which is not actually a mandatory thing actually.
Another question
Okay.
is, what is MTBF and MTTR?
MTTF is mean time between failures. And what is the next one that you asked for?
MTTR, mean time to repair.
Mean time to repair. Yeah, those are analytical things which comes onto your software.
Yes, they are used to measure the reliability and
It's part of
maintainability of the
CMMS. Yeah.
repairable systems.
Yeah. So this is basically helpful for you to understand the vendor service support and also the equipment quality. When you say your mean time between failures, let's say, for example, an ABG machine, the frequency of failure, I wouldn't say it's failure because its frequency of complaints coming up for that machine is much more than when you compare with another particular machine. So you come to know how much is that frequency, and then you can identify why that particular machine is having so much of breakdowns and how you can actually identify those breakdowns. Is it application related or is it the training related matters? So that will help you to identify. These are tools which help a biomedical engineer to make an optimal use of a machine. Okay.
What are all structure documents need to file?
When you say structured documentation for a file, you mean for the procurement part?
No, it's not
Okay,
clear.
I'll sum it up this way. One is your need assessment report,
Yes,
then your technical specifications, your the tender evaluation
yes. Technical
document,
evaluation report.
your grading and all those things, and
Yes.
a final summary of your or a report, formal report of your recommendations to the next level of management. I will show you that in the next person.
What are the processes followed and documentation required while procuring an important equipment? What are the processes
You,
followed and documentation required while procuring an imported equipment? That means while importing, this is what I understand from the
yeah,
question.
for importing, like so, for example, if you want to import as an MRI, so there will be always direct vendor available over here, who has got all the trade licenses and all those things. And when you are doing, it's more of a financial thing. How do you operate it? Whether you want to have an inland LC or you want to have an LC, all the systems are actually more of a financial driven and thing actually. Regulatory requirements, yes, when you make sure that before you order, you have to have like for example, if you're buying an X-ray machine, look at whether you have an ARB type approval number for that. If you don't have an ARB type approval, and if you're going to import a machine, your machine will not be permitted to come into India. You would have spent the money, you would have opened the LC, but you will not get a permission to commission it. So regulations like ARB type approvals are mandatory when you are importing machines. But the other machine which doesn't have some criteria like that, nowadays CDSO approvals are required. CADSO registration numbers are required. So make sure you ask for all these details before you place an order. Or even these are mandatory requirements at the time of tender bidding itself.
Another question is how to filter the one equipment more supplier. I think this question
Then
you have
we are
already answered.
captured. Yeah.
Yes, captured. And next question is when we want to go for buyback option, what are all to be kept in mind?
When do you really want to go for a buyback?
Yes,
It's
when we go
become, yeah.
when we go for buyback, what are the points to be considered?
Okay. See, when you go for a buyback means you are already having a technology which is obsolete. And that's why you really want to go for a buyback. So when you go for a buyback, you are actually locked with a particular vendor only. The same vendor who has supplied you the same thing. Yes, but they will give you at a very attractive commercial thing actually. But your objective before you decide whether you want to go for a buyback or not is actually whether the technology that you're going to get is going to meet your next 7 years or 10 years future requirements. If you decide, yes, this particular vendor who was already have a cath lab is going to replace my cath lab and give me a new cath lab, which is sufficient enough to run for another 7 or 10 years, yes, then going for a buyback is actually worthwhile. When you go for a buyback onto the same vendor, the advantage is certain section of the hardware part of the machines can still remain the same. You need not replace it, which means you don't invest on those costs actually when you go for a new machine. I took the example of a cath lab. For example, the railings, the C-arm sections, everything can remain. Only the detector and the tube related things and the associated electronics will be changed. So your costing would be saved over there. But ultimately, before going for a buyback, make sure that the technology that you are going to get is actually good enough to stay in the market for next 7 to 10 years at least.
The next question is, how is quality control performed? What are the production mechanisms against overload, overheating, and electrical faults?
Okay, the first part of the question I'll answer. How are the quality control performed?
Yes.
Right. When it comes to radiology machines, we have the QA testing, quality assurance testing, which is usually to be done by a certified radiation safety officer only. There are third-party companies who are doing that actually. When your machine is getting installed first time, company will provide it. But further to that, every year or every 2 years, you are supposed to do a QA testing done, and you have to get the ERB approval for that. Then only you're supposed to start your machines. That is when it comes to radiology machines. If you have a lab equipment, we call it IQ, OQ, PQ, installation quantification, performance quantification, like that. This also needs the support from the particular vendor. And once this IQ, OQ, PQ is done, actually, this needs to be actually part of your equipment history, and this needs to be part of a document which you have to upload to enable for an accreditation. If your laboratory, clinical laboratory needs an accreditation, then IQ, OQ, PQ documents are mandatory to get you a certification from NABL. And if you look at other critical care equipments like ventilators or defibrillators and actually all those equipments, this actually can be done in-house if you have an in-house performance testing and calibration lab, which also should be NABL accredited, or hire a third-party agencies which can actually do the process for the same. And generally, when you're insisting in your tender that the quality system or the quality assurance should be done, the vendor will do it. But if you're not done it, you have to outsource with a third party and get it done.
I have missed one
I think
question.
we have. I can run you through the examples, and then if they have any questions, then actually we can run through further on that actually. Otherwise, we may run short of time actually. I think we have got only 20 minutes more left.
Yes.
So
One question is calibration must for all the equipments because sometimes its cost is more than the new one?
that is where a biomedical engineer has to think and take a call actually. I don't think a calibration cost would be more than the cost of a new one actually. But the cost of repairing and then doing a performance testing and qualifying that equipment for safe clinical use at times can be high actually. But every year you're supposed to do a calibration thing. In India, we call it calibration, but when you come to Middle East and all, it's part of the preventive maintenance process itself. But in India, we specifically say as calibration because PM is actually what you can say done in a very what you can say minimal way. They're not really going to the deeper the real full extent. That's why government in India we have a system called calibration certificate, which mandates the performance testing and electrical safety of majority of the critical care equipments, lab equipments in its own way, and then also we have the ARB or the type approval and quality assurance certificate requirement. So these are things which has to be done. So there is no way you should actually skip these responsibilities.
Which lab equipment require IQ, OQ, PQ? There was
See, any most 90% of the lab equipments which uses an sort of an analyzers, let's say, anything coming under category of analyzer would require a IQ, OQ, and PQ. It's a biochemistry analyzer or cell counter or a ABG analyzers. All these things requires a IQ, OQ. But there are supporting equipment like centrifuge, refrigerate, centrifuge, and all. Those need not be actually given an IQ, OQ, PQ. Wherever you have chemicals coming in, where you are doing calibration of system using reagents, then this IQ, OQ, PQ becomes mandatory.
Highlight some part of AA and feasibility for society economics.
AI for procurement, yes, you can always look at it, but there are what you can say, AI has just developed into the system. Actually, see, what is AI? It's nothing but big data analysis. If your procurement data and procurement process data is already available in multiple what you can servers, those server data can be compiled and then you can put a AI system. And AI, believe in one thing, AI will only give you comparison and a recommendation, which is based on the input that you give. It will not create its own input and give you. If you just write, you give me the best physiological monitor, it will not give any particular recommendations. It will just tell based on these things, it is there. But if you give a technical specifications and then you ask to do a comparison, yes, it will probably support you. But AI will never take over your logic. AI can only be an assistive tool for you to make your work easier and decision making faster.
IQ, OQ, PQ documents mandatory for other department equipments except lab.
It is primarily for lab actually. Because in all the departments, we call it IQ, OQ, PQ. It's all the lab equipments are generally called as IQ, OQ, PQ. Radiations and all those things, when you say installation quantity, it's basically the quality assurance certifications and all. And other critical equipments, we call it your calibration certificate in terms of in the system which we follow in India.
There's another one, biochemistry autoanalyzer, hematology analyzer, coagulation analyzer for
Yeah.
IQ, OQ, PQ. This is what it is mentioned.
That's all the analysis category
Analysis.
needs
So it
that
is
actually.
okay. What documents should be collected from the vendor during equipment delivery?
Equipment delivery first is, of course, your details of shipping. If you are exporting a product, okay, when was that equipment shipped to us? They say actually they would have told us that this particular machine is a new one and given to us, but we never know when that machine had launched, came to India. He would have used that particular product, let's say an ultrasound machine. He would have taken to 25 customers and given the demo and then put in the same packing and in a nice manner and given back to you saying that this is a brand new which has just landed. So always you can insist on the year of landing documentation, year of import documents, I would say. Okay, then of course all your manufacturing test reports will be there. Your the installation cards, warranty cards, operator manual, service manual. This is as per your organization protocol, which you have to list out and specify. Because service manuals, most companies are reluctant to give. Operator's manual will be there. A short instructions guide will be there. Your country of origin, yes, you have to demand and get it.
In your view, which make is best for neuro and cardiac cath lab?
Sorry, I cannot favor any particular vendor. So I cannot give an answer to that. It is up to them to do an evaluation of the configuration, what they want, and then come up to a findings on their own.
Another question, where we can get data of new technology for comparing a particular equipment?
Pardon?
Where we can get data of new technology for comparing a particular equipment?
See, one thing is you have to look at into the web and into the company's website to see what the new launches which has happened. And there are actually exhibitions like RSNA and Medica and Arab Health. And even in India, there are a few exhibitions, but these are things where they will launch the new products and highlight the new products. So if you are lucky enough to get an opportunity to participate and understand this, then you will get some inputs from there. Otherwise, keep tracking on the websites and there are what you can say these details, which model has come in when and when it's coming to India. And many companies now, if you see, they have a different. They will ask you to select your region. If you are in America, they have a different range of products. If you are in India, there's a different range of products. If you are in Middle East, there's a different range of products. So it all depends on your region. Then you will get what is actually launched in your region. So you have to just put your efforts to understand what is the latest thing actually. There's no spoon feeding mechanism for that, I would say.
How can I monitor product dispatch from supplier and deliver to our home site? As I am biomedical engineer, what document I have to check during dispatch to delivery?
See, one thing is if you are exporting an document, let's say an LC is opened. Once an LC is opened only, then they will dispatch the equipment. That is general conditions actually. So when and at this time of what again landing actually on the customs site, you can actually have the different codes, and those against those codes you will come to know which which product has landed when actually. I guess the person who is best to answer is Dr. Vinoth himself, who is handling this particular activity day in, day out. Right?
Right. What are the processes to be followed while procuring and refurbished equipment? Any additional documentation which needs to be maintained?
First of all, refurbished equipment is something which our healthcare scenario really doesn't need, I would say. Because when you are having a refurbished equipment, you are actually compromising a lot on the safety aspects. You may have a third-party certification and all, but no real guarantee that your particular product is really meeting all the safety aspects. And there's no real regulations in place as to whether we can actually go for refurbished machines. If you see the effort from CDSO and all is actually to control the refurbished equipments from Western countries to land in India. There have been events when not only events actually, it's a common thing like any product. As I mentioned earlier, when you look at the website, US will have a different range of products. India will have a different range of products. The products which are launched in US this particular year will come to India after 2 or 3 years as a new. Probably they call it with a very fancy name like I don't want to because it's a product specific. So they come with a very fancy name and then we think it is brand new, but it ends up in India. Of course, those companies do give some assurance on the equipment, but not the real one. What is more dangerous is the Indian market themselves selling in refurbished machines. I can understand when it's an ultrasound machine, probably yes, you don't have that kind of criticality because you're just doing an assessment, but your assessment can definitely go wrong if your image clarity is not there. So what is the whole purpose of us going for advanced technologies to get a clearer and clearer, sharper images, sharper diagnostics, accurate values. And when you're looking at something which is refurbished, you are actually compromising on patient quality, patient safety, and quality care. Quality always comes at a cost, but that cost will actually give you returns to you at a later stage.
Yes, true. Can you little explain about Lupex, robotic arm, and navigation system?
I don't really want to go into product specific discussions
Yes,
today,
because
so
it's
we
not
will not
related
really
to
do that.
topic. Is there an officially published equipment aging list for biomedical equipment in India?
To my knowledge, I'm not aware of it, but you can refer to the documents from ECRI and similar organizations where they are actually giving a recommendations. It is not a mandatory at all. It is just an indicative lifetime.
The another question is how to manage work pressure versus personal in 24/7 TAT.
That is nowhere related to equipment procurement discussions
Procurement part,
happening here.
yes, we'll have a separate session. And okay, these are all the questions. Now you can proceed, Mr.
Yeah,
Renjith.
I'll just show you
With your,
some templates which I've used it. Actually, it's not the recent ones, some of the old ones, but just to help you how to, if there are youngsters who want to streamline their comparison methodology and all those things, it might be of help. So if it's not of much help, just ignore it. If it's of help, look at it something, developing it something from your end as well, like that. Okay. So I'll start. I'm trying to share the screen. Just give me a minute, actually. Okay, this is a bit old one, not a recent one actually, because I don't want to show any recent documents on a common platform like this. It is just to give an idea how we can actually have a simple compare what again specification sheet for you to compare it. Okay. So for example, I just put for a 128 CT. And if you look at make, then you will look at some of the hardware parts. Okay. And is my screen visible? Hello?
Yes, visible.
Okay. So then whether you need a reporting workstations. Okay. And these are the softwares which I mentioned. So whether you need all the softwares is a call actually. Some of them will be standard, some of them will be optional. So you can ask the vendors to list out whether it is standard configuration or a optional configuration. Okay. And if they want to specify something, you can ask them to the unique features. We call it USP, the unique selling features, and add the AMC rate, CMC rate, escalations, and warranty details as well. So this will help you to make a quick, simple comparison as to whether it will when you prepare it. So I'll now show you another one more document, which is just again this is a WHO format actually. There are a few things which can be used as a generalized standards actually. Okay. So something is gone out. Okay. So here they have got this GMDNS name and UMDNS codes and all those things, which are all going to help you to standardize a little bit more. Okay, but when it comes the technical characteristics, that is where they have a different pattern. So it's up to you to look at and refer some of those standard things and incorporate what is good. But ultimately, after that, what you are supposed to do is actually to have a comparison. When you want to do a comparison, let's say this is again for the CT, which I have done actually. We have vendor A, B, and C. So I just hidden those details actually. Let's say one product is made in India, one is in China, the third part one also in China. And you look at the hardware parts. See, if you look at the hardware parts, under hardware, gantry detector, image quality is one aspect which you can actually look into, the generator details and all. So if you click on details, you can actually get some of those details. Whatever you listed out in your previous document, you are compiling it as a comparison actually. And wherever you have not got the information, highlight and keep it so that you can ask the vendor specific details. So you make a simple comparison like this and highlight what are unique, highlight which are not really beneficial, and then highlight areas which are not getting the information, and then tell them this is exactly what you really need to get actually. Okay. So once the hardware part is done, then comes your softwares. Under software, again, you have standard software and optional softwares. Some vendor will include, some of them say it is standard. Some of them will say it is additionally included to us. Some of them, let's say a virtual colonoscopy is a standard feature in some third vendor probably has not specified. So we need to ask that question to them. So this kind of comparison is definitely going to help you in terms of understanding your product. So that's why I said hardware part, if you look at it, your hardware as well as your software or the clinical applications. When you say software, it's all clinical applications. Okay. Whether it is autofilm, CT angio, bolus tracking. So all those things are actually softwares which need to be configured in your machine. So this thing is this is the actual work which you have to do in terms of identifying what is that you really require for a particular organization, your organization. I will just show you one more template which you can, if you can develop further actually, I will show you one template where you can actually send it to the vendors. And to make your comparison easy, you lock the cells. You are actually, I'm trying to click the other things actually. See, I can give a comment, please quote product launched after 2018 only. Just an example. Now, when you're doing it now, you should say 2024 or 2025 only. And if you see here, it's free text. But if I come to this is the free text area. I can try again. But now FDA CE approval. Okay, at row number 7. Please specify and attach. When I give here, actually, I am restricting their answers, either yes or no only. They can select only yes or no. If they say yes, and if they want to add something, they can do. If they doesn't, they have to click no. They cannot say that it was. So we are restricting the free text entry for them in terms of getting the compliance sheet filled up. So let's say your generator capacity, year of launching in India. It has to be something. Let's say I'm taking 2019, it will take it. But suppose if I'm taking 2017, your system will restrict you from that. So these kind of tools, Excel tools, you can actually, you use it to get your comparison statement much easier. Generate output, whether it has got that feature, yes or no. If it's no, you want to put a justification, it will allow. But you will not be able to enter anything on any of the other cells. Only this much cells is actually editable for the particular vendor. So we can give it in this format, then your work becomes much easy. You get all your comparison done in a much easier pattern. So these are some of the tools which actually you can develop to get your actually documentations and your comparison systems and everything much faster. So most of the place you are actually listing out your requirements. Your column C is very critical because here you already done your study. You listed out what exactly you want, and then you are asking whether yes or no only from the vendor.
Renjith, just a second. Can you enlarge the screen size? This one.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it okay? Is it okay now?
Okay for me. Actually, few participants they mentioned that the screen is not visible for them, and it is visible
Yeah,
for
probably
me.
if they are joining in from their mobile or something, they might find it a bit
Something
difficult.
that could be the reason, because it is others are all
Okay.
for others it is visible.
Yeah.
And okay, right. Please proceed.
So I'm just showing one thing actually. Let's say patient table. Okay. They want carbon fiber tabletop. So the vendor has to say yes or no only. Okay. They cannot scribble anything here. If I try something, it will lock. It will not allow you. Understood. So those kind of tools actually you can develop to get your comparison statements much easier. And I'll show you one more comparison statement as well, and a grading system. I hope the screen is visible enough. Okay. So this is for an OT light, vendor A, B, C, D, E, like that. We have given some specifications to them actually. Okay.
Visible but small.
So
Can you? Is it possible to enlarge it a
I
little?
think this is probably, if I want to capture everything, it will be, yeah. Is it okay now?
Okay for me, but still there is a
Okay.
message that it is not visible.
See, I'll just try to explain how it is done actually.
Oh.
You have a 4-dome and you want a wireless camera provision. Vendor A doesn't have it. I am giving a negative marking because he is actually not supposed to got, but if he is getting, we give a negative. If somebody is having a wireless camera, we give a positive grading. So similarly, we do all the tabulation of, you give the marks against each and come to a total grading. Then you add your own service, what you can say, experiences, and you can grade it. This is totally an internal grading, not anything on the technical grading. You know this particular vendor is giving a good service, you can grade him. If you know the vendor is not doing properly, you can actually give a lesser mark. And then you do a grading 1, 2, 3, 4 on the technical aspects. Okay, so this is just a simple comparison. But if you want to go into details, you will have a lot more details with the pricing, everything onto that, which is just a rough detail which is being done.